So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where Asia has a country draft. Now, if you don't know what a country draft is, basically we have two main countries. In this video, it's going to be Russia and China. They will be on opposing sides. From there, each country will be allowed to pick one other country from Asia to join their team. And then at the end of the video, we'll have the two sides fight up against each other. I've already done this with the entire world, and I've also done it with Europe. So if you want to see those videos, make sure to go search for them on YouTube, or you can look through the channel. But yeah, if you guys do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and comment your opinion or anything that you want to comment. And let's go ahead and jump straight into the scenario. All right, so as I said in the beginning of the video, there's going to be two sides, one of them being Russia and one of them being China. And from here, they're allowed to go ahead and pick any other country from Asia to be on their side. Now, there's a lot of countries in Asia and a lot of strong ones with that. There's India, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, South Korea, Japan. Those are some of the strongest countries on the continent and maybe some of the strongest in the world. And whoever gets those countries is obviously going to have a huge advantage. However, you don't get to pick three at once. You only pick one at once, and then the other team gets to go ahead and pick its country. So with the first pick, it's going to go to Russia, and of course, they're going to go ahead and choose India. India is the next strongest country on the continent, the fourth strongest in the world, and having them on their team is going to give them an immediate advantage that China may not even be able to counter. So with the second pick in the draft, China is up, and this is going to be a hard choice because there are a lot of strong countries, but they might have to start thinking geographically. Choosing a country like Kazakhstan would be hugely beneficial because it would give a huge distraction for China, and Russia would have to focus on taking this guy out. But Kazakhstan is not a strong country at all, so they're not even worth the second overall pick. So they go ahead and decide to use that second overall pick on Japan. Now, of course, real relations are not a thing in this because that would make this impossible. Japan would never fight for China and also would never fight for Russia. So real life relations are kind of thrown out the window. But with China's pick in, it is now Russia's turn to pick, and they're going to go ahead and pick South Korea, doing what China wanted to do to Russia. They want to have South Korea as a distraction, and it will serve as just that. South Korea is also a very capable country, so it will be able to defend itself, and it will be in a pain in the backside for China. But China will go ahead and make a pretty smart move here and take Turkey with the third overall pick. Turkey is all the way over here near Europe, but it is a very capable and strong country, one of the top 20 strongest, and it will serve as a huge distraction for Russia. So now we get to pick some of the weaker countries. I don't want to say like completely weak, but some of on the weaker side. Russia will go ahead and take Iran. Reason is because Iran is right next to Turkey, and these two will be up against each other. Should Iran get wiped out, then they will go after Russia, but Russia is very capable of defending itself over here due to the military and stuff, like being heavily focused on this area. China's next pick will go after Saudi Arabia, and do notice that Pakistan has been left out here, and that's because there are some bigger needs. So it's not like you're choosing the strongest country every time. It's more so of choosing a country that's both strong and beneficial with their location. So in China's case, picking Turkey was really big because A, they're strong, and B, they serve as a good standpoint for power over here in the western part of the continent. If China only picked countries around itself, there would only be a center of power over here, and the rest would be the red team, and that's not a good distribution. So you want to have a good distribution of your draft pick country. So China chooses Saudi Arabia for three reasons, being that it's strong, it's in a good location, and it has a lot of resources, oil. So now Russia's gonna go ahead and make its next pick, and this is gonna go as a big surprise. It's going for North Korea, and once again, this is just to kind of consolidate itself around China's main area, in this case being Beijing. Having all of these countries on their side would be hugely beneficial, but I doubt China will let it slip that far. But as you'll notice, Pakistan is still here. It's fallen on the draft board quite a lot, but China will go ahead and pick them up as the next pick in the draft. And now we have a lot of the weaker countries remaining. Of course, there's still countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, there's Israel, but those are some of the smaller countries aside from Indonesia that their impact will be there, but it won't be super impactful like the other countries that have been taken. With that in mind though, Russia will go ahead and take Israel. This is making no sense because Israel and Iran are on the same time, on the same team, and that doesn't make any realistic sense. But remember, I said in the beginning that realistic relations are gone. So with Israel on the side of Iran and Russia, China has the next pick, and they are going to go after Indonesia. This is a very logical choice here at this point in the draft. Not like super early in the draft because they don't have like, well, I don't want to say they're weak. They're definitely not weak, but they're not as strong as some of the other countries have taken, and their location is kind of a I don't want to say it's a D benefit, but it's definitely not ideal. With Russia's next pick, pick, they're going to go ahead and choose, who do they choose here? Probably Bangladesh. That makes sense. They're a very populated country. They can produce a lot of resources. I'd say Russia goes with Bangladesh. China here is going to make a very smart move and go for Kazakhstan. Maybe a little bit early in the draft. Maybe they should have waited a little bit. They could have traded down in NFL terms, but that doesn't really apply here. I'm a big American football fan, not soccer. Well, God. You guys are gonna like yell at me for calling it soccer, but that's just what I've been growing up with and being taught to call it. I know that everyone calls it football, and it makes sense. The name makes sense. You play with your foot, but I'm talking about American football, which the name doesn't make sense. But I've just been growing up with it, so cope. But China chooses Kazakhstan. Smart. It's right next to Russia. Huge distraction. Russia's going to go ahead and counter this by choosing Mongolia, and that's going to be a huge blow to China because they are almost completely surrounded by red team, so that's not good. Well, China will pick up Taiwan though. There could be a little bit of interference with that, saying, hey, this belongs just to us anyway, so we don't even have to draft it. But I think the world kind of recognizes Taiwan as its own thing, just not publicly. Russia's next draft pick will be going towards, I'm not sure who they're going to pick, but let's go ahead and say that they are going to pick Afghanistan, because if you have Afghanistan on your side, well, that's a good thing. Afghanistan is impossible to conquer. We all know this. So the good draft picks are kind of like leveling out here. There's not very many strong countries left. Like Vietnam will be picked up by China, but they're not going to contribute too much. Russia's going to go ahead and they're going to pick up Iran. That's not Iran, that's Iraq. China will go ahead and call on Myanmar. Russia will take Turkmenistan. China will take Uzbekistan. Russia gets Tajikistan, and China gets Kyrgyzstan. And you'll see that sometimes in drafts, battles will kind of take place between position groups in sports, but in this case, countries. So if you want like a specific country in a specific region, you'll take that, but then maybe your opponent will take the other country because they don't want you to get too much of the good talent in that area. And the sports equivalent to that is like, say, and the NBA draft, because people know that the NBA is more, well, I guess the NBA is more worldwide recognized than American football. But like in the NBA, if you really want this really good point guard, you'll take them in the draft. But if another team needs a really good point guard because they don't have any, then they're going to take the next point guard right there and then, even though they may not be valued at that spot, because they don't want the other teams to get that point guard because he's the next best option. Kind of similar to what's happening here in Central Asia. Russia's going to take Thailand here. China will take the Philippines. Russia will get Oman. China will get the UAE. Russia gets Jordan, and China gets Syria. Russia will call on Georgia. China will go ahead and get Azerbaijan, and China will get Malaysia. But at this point, all the strong countries are gone, and now we have a bunch of weak countries that aren't going to contribute too much, but they could be geographically beneficial. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of this map. I'm not going to cheat. You can like look at the screen now and then look at it in the next frame. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and fill out this map, and I'll be right back. All right, and here is our completed map of Asia. I can go ahead and tell you that Palestine was the last pick. They are probably the weakest country in Asia. But I did want to mention that Nepal got picked up by China, and that's pretty big for China because, as we know, Himalaya mountains, very, very good geographical feature, very hard to get past those. And Nepal being on the blue team is basically like putting a giant wall right here and saying no passing. So India will be unable to move their troops through Nepal, one, because mountain, and two, because they're not on their team. That means that they're going to have to heavily focus their assault over here in Myanmar, which did get picked up by China. So maybe a smart GM there working for China. GM is general manager, person that like manages the team. I actually don't know if like soccer/football, do you guys have drafts? How does that work? I don't know how your guys' sports leagues work. I know how the MLS works in the United States, but I'm not too sure how that works worldwide. Obviously contracts, but like, is there drafts, trades? All right, so now we can go ahead and start this war. Power rankings, I think the red team is probably the more stronger side, but the blue team definitely has a lot of big players across the continent, so they have a chance here. So starting off, China will immediately start a assault on Mongolia. Yeah, North China here. The reason they're doing this is to set up their ground against Russia before they can officially launch their large-scale attack onto them. By taking out Mongolia early, China has gone ahead and kind of solidified itself up here. As we know, not a lot of stuff happening over here in Russia, and if they're able to capitalize on that, take it, and wait for the Russian army to get over here, they'll have themselves a pretty nice front line to fight the Russians up against. Meanwhile though, Russia and North Korea, as well as South Korea, do work together over here in this region to start pushing in the Chinese territory. Now, China is probably going to be on the defense a lot in this video, and that's simply because they're completely surrounded by red team countries. Speaking of red team countries, we have the Vietnamese and the Laos? What are people from Lao called? The Laonese. But they focus in on Thailand and Cambodia. We have Indonesia going up into Malaysia and completely taking out this part in Borneo, and then make a landing over here near Singapore. kind of forgot about them, and then start to snake their way up into continental Asia. Over here in the Middle East, it's about to get really ugly as the blue team takes out Israel with a relative amount of ease. Israel realistically wouldn't fall that quickly, but it's kind of like not in the picture of the grand scheme of things. Saudi Arabia takes out Qatar. However, Iran and Iraq were together in order to push down into Saudi Arabia. Iran and Russia were together to take out Azerbaijan, and they didn't start to move troops into Turkish territory. Over in Central Asia, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan worked together to push into Turkmenistan. These countries are pretty screwed because of, well, them being surrounded by two powers, being Russia and Iran. So they're going to go ahead and exhaust all their resources in an attempt to aid China, although it may be for nothing. Now on to the fun stuff. South Asia. India is going to go ahead and start to push into Pakistan. They're also going to send some troops into Myanmar, and then they'll take out Sri Lanka. But yeah, a lot of movement happening here in the first turn. Back over to the Middle East, we have Saudi Arabia pushing into Oman. And we have Indonesia and South Asia working together in order to take out Indonesia. That's what am I saying? Am I okay in the head? I called Thailand Taiwan, and then I call them Indonesia. Something is not right. Anyway, they're gone now, and well, that's really good for the blue team because now Indonesia will send its troops up north, and they can then, you know, take over the world because it's Indonesia. No, but seriously though, those troops are coming, and it'll very much help out against India. Back over here, we have Russian troops kind of doing what China didn't expect, but they kind of expected Russia to send their troops over to here in order to push into China and take them out, because if China falls, then the red team essentially wins the war. But what Russia is actually doing is they're sending their troops into Kazakhstan, and from here they're likely going to launch an assault over here into China, focusing in on the Xinjiang province. So Russian troops flood into the north of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's military really isn't much, and Kazakhstan is a very flat country, so they just kind of get rolled through. Turkmenistan manages to push back into Kazakhstani. Yeah, well, they're gone. It doesn't matter what they were, because they're not existing anymore. And Central Asia falls completely to the red team. It's not necessarily a turning point in the war, but it's definitely a very vital event. Back over the Middle East, we have Saudi Arabia taking out all of Oman, letting them go ahead and send their troops back up north now. With this, they're able to push the Iranian troops out of their country, and together with Turkey, they launch an assault into Iraq, taking over Baghdad. And from here, we have a stalemate in the Middle East due to an equivalent amount of power. With this, though, Iran and Afghanistan are going to launch an assault into this part of Pakistan. And over here, Russia and North Korea work together once again in order to make more gains in the Manchurian area. Japan is going to try to do stuff. They're going to take out Sakhalin, which it's something, but Japan really can't do anything. It's unlikely that they'd be able to land in South Korea. So what is likely is them sending their troops to mainland China in order to fight elsewhere. China, on the other hand, will go a little bit more into Russia in order to try to capture any of the smaller cities that are on the border, but there really aren't too many, so they don't go too far. They're going to attempt to push into a little bit of India, but they eventually get stopped. And now we have an event in the war known as the Great Stalemate. This essentially means that neither side is kind of like pushing into each other. You know, when a war starts, it kind of goes like the aggressor pushes in, the defender pushes back a little bit, and then it goes back and forth. Whoever is stronger is eventually going to win, no matter who it is. But at this point, we have a stalemate, which looks something like this. There is no movement, barely any, and if it does happen, then it gets pushed right back. So stalemate is no gains for either side, or maybe they're exchanging gains. And this happens for a couple of months. Many Asian countries are thinking about a kind of peace treaty, kind of you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone kind of thing. But eventually a major event occurs, and this will go ahead and change the tide of the war and kind of influence the outcome of it. India, Russia, and Iran will work together in order to push straight through Pakistan, cutting the country into two. So with this happening, Pakistan starts to weaken and the red team gains more strength in this area until eventually we have the capturing of their capital of Islamabad, and Pakistan surrenders, which realistically they wouldn't surrender, but it happens here. And this is a turning point because now the red team is completely together. They're all linked up here in the C shape, and being in shape is very good. I'm not leading to a sponsor, I'm just saying that. I don't really know how sponsorships work. I get emails from companies, but it's not the actual company, so I don't know if I should like actually talk to them. They give me contracts. I don't know if I should sign those. It's sketchy, it's weird. I mean, like, if you're an actual company and you want to sponsor me, please do not use those weird third parties. Just contact me yourselves. I will happily take a sponsorship. Anyway, yeah, Pakistan gone. That's not good. The red team is now going to focus their country, or what am I saying? They're going to focus on taking on China. Russia's plan of pushing in the Xinjiang works, and China is forced to retreat their troops out of Mongolia, which is both a very bad thing and a bad thing. They do hold on to some parts of the former country, but they just have to focus on protecting themselves because the red team is coming. Over in the Middle East, Iran like tries to push into Turkey, but it doesn't go well, and Turkey manages to push both Russia and them out of their country. It kind of leads to I don't want to say a collapse, but like a small partial collapse in Iran that kind of makes them lose a lot of land. The liberation of Azerbaijan, or at least southern Azerbaijan, occurs, but it's not anything too major because they're getting beat down right now. Conscription is most likely being used here, like people being dragged out of their homes and forced to fight in the military. I mean, it's Russia and China, so what do you expect? But yeah, there's a lot of death. This is like probably the deadliest war in history, more deadly than World War II. We have China completely pulling out of Mongolia, which kind of hurts them as the retreat was a little bit sloppy, and it leads to Russia getting some territory. A huge offensive goes into central China, which gives them a lot of land. India manages to push China out of its own territory, and with this they go into Myanmar and connect up with Russia. Over in the Middle Eastern area, Turkey's gonna go ahead and push into Georgia and Armenia and up into Russia, but this doesn't matter because, oh no, the Russians, the Indians, and the Iranians, the Afghans, there we go, the Koreans, they all just staged a huge push in towards Beijing, and it kind of worked because Beijing is now under control of the red team. With that, China loses control of its central government and it starts to collapse. Some countries are going to go ahead and see their way out of this war. That includes Japan, that includes Indonesia, that includes Saudi Arabia, and that also includes Vietnam. All the other countries are open to terms of surrender, but only if they manage to gain something, and I mean that is if they're in a position to gain. So as China breathes its last breath, they surrender, and the next leader of the blue team turns out to be Turkey. Turkey, who has a lot of land under their control, is going to go ahead and say, we're willing to surrender, do whatever you want to do with China, we don't care about them, but just make sure that the people who have gained land get that land. So we can go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty, except I'm not really sure how a peace treaty would work in this scenario since it's such a large-scale war. So one thing we know for sure is that Turkey is going to get land. They likely end up splitting Armenia with Azerbaijan, so that would look something like this. They get that and they get this. They would most likely fully annex Georgia. We would probably see Israel ending up turning into Palestine, which that could probably sort itself out. We could see Oman getting split between the UAE and Yemen. Maybe they would unite together into one country. Maybe Arabia unites as a whole, and then, you know, China would get divided up by a couple people. North Korea would get land, Manchuria would go to Russia, Mongolia would likely get land, Central Asia, India. So I'm not going to draw all that because you guys can visualize that. You've seen my past videos, you know what it would look like. Mostly though, I am trying to save some time here because I got to do some stuff. Anyway, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see more draft videos just like this one, but maybe with Africa, do let me know in the comments. I could also maybe do one of these with America because I think North and South America together would make more sense than doing them on their own. I think on their own, those two continents would be kind of boring, but I'm definitely opening to do more videos just like this because this was pretty fun. I do like this. I like the sports aspect of it because, you know, I'm into sports, or maybe if you didn't know, now you do know. But yeah, once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, thank you to all the super fans, which include Matthew Newman, Yam, Kali Speaks Plays, Shadow Gamer Z, Deva Edits, Mr. Bonk 7, Hammer Toad 45, Patrick Clauser, Connor the Gamer, Texan Cowboy Cheese, Poland Country Ball, Yakko, Nevada Garbage Trucks, DW Cool Dude, Soviet Ball, and Serminator. Once again, thank you guys.